A boy with numb hands, a lynx too weak to cry. A backpack zipped against the cold. What is the price of waiting? What does help look like when your hands aren't whole? By sundown, the camp will learn the difference between saving and keeping. By dawn, Noah will too. Snowmelt roared under the wooden footbridge as Noah slipped from his father's hand and leaned over the rail. The camp bus had just emptied. Whistles, backpacks, spring wind needling damp sleeves. Then silence. In the tangle of alder roots, something stilled the world. A newborn lynx no bigger than Noah's lunchbox. Ribs fluttering like moth wings. No cry. Just breath so thin he wasn't sure it existed. He looked for a mother. None. He looked for a teacher. Too far. He looked at his open backpack, the one lined with an old scarf, and didn't run. He knelt. The breath fogged his fingers once, then again. Camp Birch Hollow breathed in spruce shade and damp loam, the mess tent smelling faintly of aluminum and steam. Wind ticked the guy lines, a thin pewter evening setting every signboard trembling. Noah stepped down from the bus and kept his breathing even, as if the forest had given him rules a second before the councillors did. On the bulletin board, laminated sheets fluttered. No fooding cabins. No handling wildlife. Lights out, Niner. He read them twice, then looked at his backpack. You okay, bud? Mark asked, already looping rope through a cleat for the canoe rack. Fine, Noah said, small voice steady. He was careful about steadiness. The cabin smelled of pine cleaner and wet wool. Bunks waited, narrow as shelves. Above the first lower bunk, a clock ticked with a soft plastic patience. Noah slid his wet jacket over the rail where heat rose like a quiet ladder. He knelt, unzipped the backpack, and cupped what the riverbank had left him. A newborn lynx, fur frosted tawny grey, and still slick at the shoulders, ear tufts barely there, tail stub black-tipped like punctuation. Its belly was cool, its breath was a thread. Noah tested warmth with the back of his hand, then tucked the old scarf deeper, the wool, smelling faintly of home soap. He slid the pack beneath the lower bunk, away from the draft by the door. He switched off the dangling keychain light to save its battery, whispering, "Keep yours." The mess tent clanged alive. B, the 19-year-old councillor, clapped once and smiled too brightly. "Game after dinner, capture the flag," Ms. Delgado answered by lifting a checklist, pencil poised. "Head counts first." Noah kept close. When kids spilled outside, he pinched the mess tent flap behind them so the wind wouldn't undo the heat. "Thanks, Noah," Ms. Delgado said, not looking away from her list. The thanks felt like a blanket tucked at the right edge. At the cabin again, he timed the breaths to the clock. 4, 5, 6. Pause. 7, as if stubbornness could shape lungs. "You eating?" Ricky leaned in, hair sticking up like wet grass. "In a minute." Noah rose, washed his hands longer than necessary in warm water, then carried a kettle back to the cabin under the excuse of tea. He set it on the floor above the backpack, not too close, letting steam writhe in a small ghost that faded before anyone would notice. Mark passed the doorway with a coil of rope. "Teamwork later, pal," he said, missing the way Noah's shoulders angled around something. "We'll need good knots." "Okay," Noah said. He wasn't sure which kind of knot tonight required. Dinner roared, trays rattled, whistles shrilled, stories burst like thrown pebbles. Noah stayed near the edge, table wiping, moving crumbs toward the bin with slow strokes as if speed could steal heat. "Right," Noah said. He wasn't bringing food, he was bringing weather. Back at the bunk, he placed the inhaler beside the pack, blue plastic, bright as a promise. His thumb brushed the dosage counter, a habit of checking what breath might cost later. From the counselor's open tote, the corner of a reflective emergency blanket winked like a fish scale. Noah didn't take it. He adjusted the scarf instead, tucking it so the kitten's nose found the warmer fold. "Hey!" he whispered, not a name, a shape of care. The ribs lifted, faltered, lifted. He listened for coyote far off, for raccoon chatter near the dumpsters, for the nearest footstep that might mean well and do harm. "Capture the flag now," Bee shouted outside, cheerful and wary in the same breath. Noah wiped his hands again. "I'll help Ms. Delgado," he said, and the sentence fit him like a coat. Ms. Delgado didn't look surprised. She slid the attendance sheet toward him. "Call the names slow." He did, savoring seconds. In a cabin of 20 lungs, Noah counted only one that mattered. Twilight leaned against the cabins while sleet ticked the windows like fingernails. Inside, the air smelled of wet socks and pine cleaner. Noah sat cross-legged beside the lower bunk, the backpack braced against his shins, listening. 6 breaths. A pause that felt like a ledge. Then a thin, stubborn 7th. He tested timing again, syncing to the plastic clock's click. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he breathed, then held still with it, a hand hovering like a roof, not touching. The kitten's side lifted late, as if climbing back into its own body. Noah smiled without teeth. "Okay, I'll wait." Footsteps passed. Mark's voice trailed from the hallway, bright with plans. "After chow, we'll check the canoe shed. Maybe you can learn a cleat hitch." Noah thought of ropes and loops and how knots held without squeezing too hard. "What if a baby animal needed heat more than food?" he asked. A question floated sideways. "Food keeps you moving," Mark said, mishearing the middle. "Heat's for later. Come eat, champ." He ruffled Noah's hair and was gone, a warm gust with a blind spot. Noah looked at the pack. "Later doesn't work for you," he whispered. The zipper tab glinted like a small moon. In the mess hall, the world went wide and loud. Steam veiled the ceiling. Trays banged. Bee raised her voice over clatter. "Reminder, no food in cabin. No scents, no crumbs. Raccoons have thumbs, you guys." Laughter rolled. Then a counselor from Birch Bee cabin appeared, breath clouding. "They're back by the dumpsters," he said. 3 adults, mean?" Bee's cheer thinned into protocol. "Double-check doors, sweep tables, please." Noah dried his hands and carried a capped thermos toward the cabins. Ms. Delgado intercepted him with a look that rested, not pressed. She set another thermos in his palms. "For tea," she said, almost a whisper. "Place it where it will do the most good." He placed it on the floor, lampward, so heat could pool without touching cloth. The backpack seemed to settle, as if rooms could have weather. From the bunks came a chorus of zipper teeth and bragging. "Bet I stay up past curfew." "Bet you snore like a chainsaw." Ricky dropped onto the lower bunk beside Noah. "You skipping capture the flag?" "Helping Ms. Delgado," Noah said. He adjusted the scarf inside the pack by touch alone. A paw flexed, claws not yet through. A question mark curled under fur. The sleet hissed and eased. He listened again. 6. The ledge, the return. "Good," he breathed. "I'm here." Later, at dinner's edge, he tried again with his father. He held his tray and kept his tone sideways. "If a baby animal needed heat more than food,
what would you do first?" Mark reached for napkins, missing the hinge of the question. "First? Get calories in. You can't tie knots with shaky hands." "What if moving it makes it colder?" Noah asked. Mark smiled and tapped the table. "Then you move faster." The answer was kind and useless at once. Noah nodded like a good listener and returned to the cabin with the quiet of someone carrying water in his chest. Night settled with a soft mechanical hum from the heater, then hiccuped, then steadied. The backpack's zipper pull vibrated faintly when kids thundered down the hall for toothbrushing. Bees swept through.
Cheerful again, but firmer. No snacks, friends, no gum, no wrappers under pillows. Raccoons will write you thank you notes with their little hands. Groans followed, then laughter. Noah set his inhaler beside the backpack, like a lighthouse he could lift. The blue plastic clicked. He traced the ridges with his thumb, then slid it behind the frame where only he would know it waited. When wood smoke snuck under the door and scratched his throat, he turned his face to the blanket and coughed into softness. He didn't want the cabin to breathe wrong around the backpack. He wanted the space to feel like a held note, not a siren. He shut the reading lamp halfway, tilting the shade, so light, brushed the floor. Outside, coyotes sang a thin line. The kitten jerked, a flinch no larger than a blink. Its whiskers quivered against the scarf fibers, tasting wool air. It's nothing, Noah murmured. It's far. He didn't lift the pack. He flattened his palm near the curve, where ribs counted themselves, and breathed to be a metronome. Minutes folded into the dark. He learned the intervals the way some kids learn chords. 6 and a cliff. The pause that scared him, and the spiteful return. He whispered, "You're allowed to come back late." The heater thumped, pipes clicked. Sleet softened to rain. Noah closed his eyes and kept time by feel. When the wind rattled the windows, 2 breaths matched, and neither belonged to the forest. Late night pressed a cold palm to the roof. The power flickered, steadied, then sighed through the baseboard heater with a low, reassuring breath. Noah sat on the floor, sock heels whitening the boards. He slid his hand under the lower bunk for the backpack, lifted it to his knees, and listened. 6 counts, a drop. Then a tiny return, like a match catching on damp wood. He eased the zipper a finger's width, checked the scarf's fold, and closed it again. "Easy," he whispered. "We keep what we can keep." The cabin smelled of wool and rain. Outside, snow grains whispered. He remembered the glint in the counselor's tote, the folded sheet that looked like fish scale skin. He waited until footsteps faded, then stood, small and careful, and crossed the hall. The tote's zipper rasped softly. He took the reflective blanket and returned, heart thumping against his ribs like a small bird. He slid the silver sheet beneath the mattress where the backpack would sit. No rustle, no shiny edges showing, only a hidden mirror to send back what warmth the room could spare. Heat, he realized, could be pointed. He filled a metal mug halfway with hot water from the thermos, then angled the reading lamp so the bulb's glow kissed the mug's rim and pooled warmth along the floor. He checked the distance with his wrist before setting the pack in place. "Too close?" he asked the room. The heater hummed. He shifted the mug a thumb's width away, then crouched, steadying the pack with one hand while the other found the scarf's edge. "There, that's better." The blue bandana was a knot around his wrist, dark with a day's sweat. He unwound it, inhaled the faint salt, then tucked one corner near the kitten's nose so scent would hold the space he couldn't. "I'll be back," he murmured. He pressed his lips to his own wrist and felt the pulse he'd learned to count during nighttime coughs. "Borrow this," he said, placing the cloth like a bookmark at the edge of a life. He studied the stillness that helped more than motion. "Why don't you run?" he asked the small shape, though he knew the answer wasn't words. Stillness kept heat. Lifting lost it. He practiced not lifting. He practiced being a room where warmth didn't spill away. The lesson was in his knees, in his slow back, in the way he tucked his chin and waited the way one waits for bread to rise, a patience that looked like doing nothing, and was in truth everything. "Who leads?" he murmured, checking the lamp's angle again. A boy who listened could lead. He listened to tiny valves open and close. He listened to the gaps between the cliff where sound dropped and fear rose. "I can count," he said softly, as if counting were a rope stretched over a ravine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He held his breath when the kitten stopped, held it without drama, eyes on the zipper tooth shining like a star. When the 7th arrived, late and thin, he nodded. Good. The price of waiting arrived in tremors, his thighs burning from the crouch, the itch in his throat he wouldn't scratch with a cough, the worry that help, done too loud, would shatter what little the night had managed to gather. He brushed the inhaler with his fingertips, then drew his hand back. Not yet. He matched the next 6 counts, and the next, letting minutes dissolve until fear thinned enough to let the room have edges again. Bunk springs squeaked, Ricky's socks scuffed. "You hear that?" Ricky whispered. Noah froze, pulse loud in his ears. "Hear what?" Ricky leaned close, hair spiking like wet grass. A sound lifted from the backpack, half purr, half breath. Noah coughed, abrupt and human. "My throat," he said, voice sandpapery. "Smoke." Ricky's eyes softened. "Yeah, me too. B says we'll play cards if the storm holds." He looked at the lamp. "You reading?" "Maybe," Noah said, already planning to switch it off at the slightest shadow at the door. When Ricky wandered off, Noah slid a sheet of paper from his notebook and wrote in careful pencil, "Found a baby lynx. It breathes like a match. Need help? Without loud." He stared at the sentence, then folded it twice and pressed it flat under the thermos. A letter that might become a bridge or remain a talisman, he didn't know yet. He traced the fold with a fingernail and tucked the pencil back. He would decide when morning could hold decisions. He refused a name. Names meant keeping. This wasn't his to keep. "You are now," he whispered instead, turning the scarf so the warmer seam met the small nose. The kitten flexed its paws, a kneading that found nothing but wool and the edge of bandanna. The claws had not broken through yet, tiny commas tucked in fur. Its mouth made milk-seeking shapes in sleep, a dream older than rules. "I know," Noah said, "I know." The power flickered again, a blink. The heater paused, resumed. He angled the lamp, checked the mug, checked the reflective blanket by pressing his palm to the mattress where heat gathered and rebounded. "You're okay," he said, the words barely air.
"I'm here." He hummed a line he remembered from a lullaby his mother used, nothing fancy. 4 notes, repeated. His voice was small and even, the kind boats follow in fog. The pack didn't move, the breaths did. Hours thinned into edges. Each time the ledge yawned wider, he felt panic knock at his ribs. He reached for the inhaler once, lifted it, listened to its small plastic certainty, then set it down again. "Not you," he told himself. "Them." He laid both palms on either side of the backpack and became a wall that didn't press, an anchor that didn't drag. When a draft slipped under the door, he repositioned the pack with the gentlest tilt, as if the floor itself might cry out if jostled. The hallway lights glowed softly, then dimmed. B passed the door, humming tunelessly,
and peeked in. "All quiet?" she whispered. "All quiet," Noah said. She scanned the room, shapes under blankets, a lamp angled down, a mug, a boy awake who didn't ask for anything. "You're a good helper," she said, and padded on. Noah watched the doorway frame the slow snow, then looked back at the pack. "We're helping by not moving," he told it, and was surprised by how true it sounded. He dozed, sitting up, chin to chest, counting even in sleep, the numbers lining his dreams like stitches.
A pocket of stillness woke him, an absence so complete it felt physical. He sat up. The clock clicked. He couldn't hear the tiny engine. "Come on," he whispered, voice breaking like thin ice. He slid the pack closer to his ribs and pressed it against the warm center of his sweatshirt. He hummed the 4 notes, slower. He lowered his face until the zipper brushed his cheek. "I'm here, I'm here, I'm here." Nothing. Then a tremor. A sip of air, thin as string. He didn't move. He loosened his hold to almost nothing, enough that heat stayed, but pressure didn't steal breath. Another sip, another. "That's it," he whispered.
Tears he wouldn't wipe pooling cool at the corner of his eyes. "That's it. Borrow mine. Borrow the room. Borrow the quiet." The bandana's corner warmed beneath his palm, giving back the pulse he had pressed there hours before. The world beyond the bunk existed, snow on spruce, voices deep in sleep, the slow ache of rope and canoe waiting for morning. But this square of floor was the whole map. He set the inhaler on the mattress edge where he could reach it blind. He adjusted the lamp once more, degrees only, like turning a dial in his chest. "I won't lift you unless the air asks me to," he said, a promise made to breathe itself. The kitten answered with a whisper of lungs finding their own edges again. He folded the letter and slid it into his pocket, where it warmed against his thigh. He might give it to Ms. Delgado at dawn. He might not. He would let the breathing decide. He pressed the backpack back to the warmed mattress, tucking the reflective blanket's corner tighter with a fingertip. "Sleep," he said, and for the first time, the word felt possible. He leaned his head to the bunk frame and kept the rhythm with the smallest nods, a conductor for an orchestra of 2. When the heater sighed, he sighed with it. When it paused, he became stillness. When sleet softened and the cabin's pine-sap breath deepened, he let the room sing for them. Outside, a branch shed snow with a soft thump. Inside, the clock kept patient time. Noah tasted metal at the back of his tongue and didn't cough. He blinked grit from his eyes and didn't move. He learned the shape of keeping alive: lamp, mug, scarf, silver sheet, bandana, counting, stillness, and a boy who chose now over mine. He learned that saving a life sounded like not moving. Before dawn, the motion light snapped awake. White, harsh, still. Raccoons scattered like spilled marbles, then vanished into spruce shadow. Noah sat up. The heater stuttered. The backpack shifted against his knee. Silence fell inside the zipper. Not sleep, not safe. He froze. Listened. 6 counts had gone missing. He bent close. "Hey, stay!" he whispered into wool. A shape slid along the boardwalk, low, heavy with hunger, loping wrong. Ears peeked in the dark, eyes caught the spill of light, held. A paw touched the door, wood answered with a soft drum. Noah coughed, dry and sharp. The cough scared him, scared her. The backpack twitched, then went still, too still. "Breathe," he said. Nothing moved. The clock ticked on without mercy. He made the choice. Move or lose it. Heat or S. He stood. Feet found his boots. Laces flopped like tongues. He grabbed his hoodie, pulled it on wrong, fixed it fast. The blue bandana waited in his pocket. A small, warm flag. He touched the inhaler, left it. Tonight belonged to smaller lungs. He leaned toward Mark's bunk. "Outside," he whispered. Urgent, barely voice. Mark stirred. "Bathroom, hurry, bud." Blanket rustle. Sleep reclaimed him. Noah eased the zipper, narrow gap, enough for one thin life. Cold knifed in and took the room's breath, his too. He lifted the pack, hugged it once, opened the door. Night bit, boards squealed. Frost glowed like ash. The shadow froze at the threshold, ears forward, nose tasting. She was lean, high-shouldered, limping on one hind leg. A cut ridge scarred the ankle. Old metal had taught pain. Her breath smoked, short, fast, frantic when she scented the pack. Noah dropped to his knees. The boardwalk burned cold through jeans. "It's yours," he whispered. "Please, breathe first." His hands steadied. Footsteps approached. Wood creaked in warning. Light bobbed low. "Ms. Delgado!" Flashlight lens down. Nod up. "No startles," she breathed. A neighbor chaperone barked from the path. "Hey, what's happening?" Ms. Delgado lifted a hand, a steady wall. "Quiet, please." The mother stepped once, stopped, listened to the zipper breathe. Noah lowered the pack to the boards, fingers numb, heart loud. He unzipped another inch, warmth spilled like a kept secret. A whisker just inside trembled. The kitten's ribs fluttered once. She heard it, head tilted. A soft chuff answered. Noah swallowed. "I can't keep you," he said, "but I can open." He slid the blue bandana to the lip, a bridge of scent. The mother came closer, pad silent, scarred leg trembling. Somewhere behind, the heater died. The night listened harder. Noah edged the pack forward, an inch, another. The mother lowered her muzzle, touched cloth, touched breath. The kitten stirred, a paper-thin sound. Then nothing again. Noah didn't rush. Rushing spilled heat. He remembered the price. He looked back once. Mark slept, shadowed, trusted him without knowing. "Please," Noah said, barely louder than frostfall. "Take him. Live." Her ears flicked. She gathered herself. Pain argued. Need won. She stepped into the doorway seam. One paw, then two. Noah held breath until it hurt. Then he let it out clean. The kitten's side fluttered again, a signal flag. Faint. From the path, the chaperone shifted. "Should I call someone?" "Not yet," Miss Delgado said. "Quiet is working." Snow started again, thin as breath. The world narrowed to fur. Noah's knees shook. He stayed steady. He stayed small. His hands warmed the air, not touching, making space. The mother leaned, took the kitten's scruff, hesitated at pain. Noah didn't move. He offered the bandana closer, a cue. She breathed the cloth, understood, shifted weight, lifted cleaner. The kitten sagged into her jaw, small weight, necessary weight. Noah eased the pack back, opened wider, offered warmth out. For a moment, all three breathed the same thin cloud. Then the mother turned, limped one step, looked back once. Noah's heart kicked. He stayed on the threshold, chose patience. Behind him, the heater restarted. A low, mechanical prayer. He could have closed the door. He didn't. He waited. Wind pulled at his hoodie strings. Frost painted his knuckles. Ms. Delgado stepped nearer. "You're doing right, Noah." He nodded, eyes on breath, not praise. "Please go," he whispered. The kitten made one last flutter, enough to answer hunger. The mother slipped back into dark, soft, certain, carrying. Noah sagged to his heels. The doorway held cold and quiet. He looked at his hands, open hands, new hands. He opened the backpack first and himself second. Dawn unstitched the dark with a pale gold edge across frost-silver grass. Breath from the cabins drifted like small flags and folded again. Noah knelt at the threshold where night had held its line and watched the space the lynx mother had left. Cold bit his fingers and then forgot him. Behind him, Ms. Delgado set her flashlight on the board, lens down, a circle that did not challenge eyes. "No startles," she said finally, voice softened to cloth. Mark arrived with sleep still at the corners of his face. He stopped beside Noah and took in the open door, the melted oval on the boards, the silence that wasn't empty. "What's happening?" he asked, but he didn't make it loud. "No speeches," Ms. Delgado murmured. She wrapped her scarf from her neck and laid it beside the backpack, not over it. "Let the air do its work." The forest breathed in corners. A chickadee sounded like 2 drops of tin. Water under ice spoke in veins. Noah flexed his fingers and kept them open. "He'll come back," he whispered, meaning breath, meaning courage. "Breath returns to where it's welcome," Ms. Delgado said. She took 3 slow steps backward, drawing the gathered adults back with her like a tide. From the spruce edge, the mother lynx showed herself in full daylight. Shoulders rose high as if stitched from hunger, one hind leg held cautious and wrong, her muzzle lifted. A torn ridge scarred the joint, an old trap's memory that had never stopped speaking. She didn't run. The stillness of her kitten anchored her to the edge of us. "Let their breath decide," Ms. Delgado said, one hand lifted to hold distance. People listened because the sentence asked them to behave like trees. Even the chaperone who wanted action swallowed his next word. Noah shifted the backpack forward, inching the scarf's warm pocket toward the seam where outside began. He looked at Mark. "I think we wait," he said. Mark's mouth opened, then closed. He rubbed Noah's back once, a slow circle the size of a biscuit. "I'm here," he said. From the road, tires murmured. A Ranger truck took the curve careful, engine low. Ranger Maya Red Cloud stepped out carrying a soft crate and a satchel that breathed warmth. She saw the lynx before she saw the people. She let her shoulders drop and her hands stay empty. "Morning," she said. "I'll read what you've already said with your bodies." Ms. Delgado nodded toward Noah instead of answering. Maya knelt to his height. "You keeping time?" Noah nodded. "Tell me what the air told you," Maya said. He pointed to the backpack. 6 and a cliff," he said. "Then a late one that hates being late." Maya's mouth creased, not a smile, something like respect. She opened the satchel, heat packs, towels, a gel pad that would hold warmth without drowning scent. She didn't take over. She fit into the quiet already made. "Choice looks like this," she murmured, setting the pad near the threshold. "Stand near, don't chase. Offer, don't insist." She glanced at the mother's leg and lowered her voice further. "Hold still," she said. "She can't feed and hunt both. If we leave them, the small one chooses not to stay." Mark looked to Ms. Delgado, then to Noah. He didn't ask for permission to care. He rearranged it. He took off his knit cap and pressed it into Noah's hands. "For later," he said. "For after you breathe again." The mother lynx drifted a step nearer. Nostrils trembling, eyes fixed on the small heat that smelled of wool and boy. Noah inched the backpack toward the seam. He stopped when her ears tipped back. "It's yours," he said, "if you want it." The kitten's breath puffed once, a moth against cold glass. The mother chuffed, low and raw, the sound of a door unjamming. Maya set the soft crate down and opened it like a held-out hand. She warmed the gel pad inside with a press of her palm, then tucked a towel to make walls. She didn't reach for the kitten. She reached for Noah's attention. "You've led us this far," she said. "Want to finish the sentence?" He understood. Leadership could be a softer verb. He lifted the blue bandana from his wrist and laid it in the crate, anchoring a corner where a nose could find it. "So it doesn't feel alone," he said. Maya looked at him, then at the mother. "Responsibility is not possession," she said quietly. It's giving breath the best odds. She met Mark's eyes, then Ms. Delgado's, confirming a circle rather than command. Noah answered without words. He slid the crate to Boardwalk's lip, waiting for breath to choose. He kept nothing except the promise of a scent. Late morning lifted frost from the boardwalk and set the river to its bright, thawing talk. Ranger Maya eased the soft crate into the truck's back seat, the gel pad still warm. The blue bandanna tucked like a small promise in the corner. The mother lynx, sedated just enough to calm pain, breathed with the kitten pressed against her ribs. "We'll take them to rehab in Cloquet," Maya said, voice cotton soft. "Quiet road, heat all the way." Noah nodded and touched the crate's rim with 2 fingers, not to keep, only to thank. "Be safe," he whispered. Maya met his eyes. "You already gave them a safe," she said, closing the door, as if it were a page. The truck rolled away. Snowmelt hissed under tires. Noah watched the exhaust drift pale and straight, a ribbon that thinned without breaking. Ms. Delgado knelt beside him until the sound faded. "Backpack?" she asked gently. He shrugged it onto both shoulders. The straps hung a little crooked from the night's work. She tugged them even, then tightened one notch with careful fingers. "There," she said, "so it rides well." He breathed once, deeper. "Thank you." She stood and smoothed the front of his hoodie like a blessing that didn't need a name. Mark approached with his hatless hair standing up in the cold, embarrassment written in the little lines around his mouth. He didn't start with rules. He held out Noah's scarf, wrapping it twice and tucking the ends as if fixing weather was a father's quiet job. "Did I scare you by sleeping?" he asked. Noah thought about the gap of night and the small returning breaths. "No," he said, and it was almost true. Mark looked at the inhaler in Noah's hand, then to the backpack. "Spares in my pocket," he said. "Yours goes in the top pouch." He waited until Noah slid the inhaler in and zipped it. Good. No lecture, only hands doing the right thing at the right time. Camp shrank back into ordinary. B called for lost and found. Someone cheered for the winning capture the flag team, as if night had not sifted anything from their hearts. The bus idled, white exhaust pluming and folding like a great animal sleeping. Noah stood within the slow cloud and let it ribbon around him. "Hear it?" Mark asked softly. Big breath. Noah nodded. "Like the cabin. Like the heater." He didn't say, like the crate, like the space under the bunk, like the place in his chest he had kept open without closing his fists. They walked to the bus together. Ms. Delgado touched Noah's shoulder at the step. "What you did," she said. "You led with listening." He held her gaze. "You led me first," he answered, and she smiled with her eyes more than her mouth. "Maybe we both did," she said. "Maybe that's the best way." He sat by the window and kept his backpack on his lap, the fabric still warm where it had rested against the reflective blanket. "Do you think they'll remember me?" he asked, not sure who he meant by they. Mark took the seat across the aisle. "They'll remember warmth," he said, and how it felt to be given room. The road unwound in a ribbon of wet black. Trees thinned to fields, fields to small towns to the familiar angles of home. Noah watched the glass fog with his breath and drew a fingertip line through it, a curve that looked like a sleeping animal. He didn't write a name, he didn't need one. Somewhere down the road, a truck carried 2 breaths he had learned to count without touching. At home, the house smelled like old books and laundry soap. Mark set the backpack on Noah's desk and stepped back, giving the room to its owner. "Want cocoa?" he asked from the doorway. "In a minute," Noah said. He pulled the zipper slowly, the sound a zipper always makes when it has carried more than pencils and paper. The blue bandana was gone, of course. In its place, in the perfect metal valley of the teeth, a single pale hair had caught and held. It lifted in the draft like a tiny flag. He didn't move for a long breath. He reached finally and pinched it with the very tip of his nails, then laid it in the shallow wooden tray where he kept stones from lakes and a marble his grandfather had carried in his pocket for luck. "Find what you needed?" Mark asked, voice low. Noah touched the empty corner where the bandana had warmed all night. "I found what needed me," he said. Mark leaned on the doorframe and let that be enough. The room listened. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked once. The late sun pressed its palm to the window and withdrew. He zipped the backpack halfway and slid it onto the hook by the door. He turned off his bedroom light the way he had turned the lamp at camp, not snapping, but easing the switch down as if darkness was something you could bruise. In the dim, the inhaler on the desk looked small and sure. He set his wrist on the edge and felt for the echo that had guided him through one long night. "Will they be okay?" he asked the quiet. The quiet answered with ordinary things. A kettle beginning to tick, the soft roll of the bus's sound still in his ears, the sense of a crate riding warm somewhere farther north. He let the answers be enough. He lifted his wrist to his mouth and breathed against the skin, then lowered it, keeping the warmth where it could do the most good. The house's heater started, a low mechanical hush, and the room took a deeper breath with it. He stood very still. He let stillness be help. He let help be letting go. "If this story touched your heart," he whispered to the pale hair in the tray, borrowing a line he'd heard Ms. Delgado use when the younger kids were scared. "Stay close." Then he smiled, small and private, because closeness had changed shape but not disappeared. He turned toward the door, then paused and looked at the place the bandana had lain against his skin. On his wrist, the place the bandana had warmed, his pulse kept time with a life he'd let go. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart even a little, that's our greatest joy. If you'd like, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'll keep bringing you stories that stay with you, so please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.